Hello, I just want to get the video set up. Unfortunately, Facebook Live does not let you get your zoom and your color right before you start. So, we are going to do a mini watercolor painting demo. It's going to be short and I'm going to include some tutorials later because it is super windy and we are afraid it's going to storm any minute. So, first I want to talk about supplies. So you need water, you need a soft bristled paintbrush, any paintbrush that's soft will do, and you need watercolor paints. So I said in an earlier video, I really like these ones. These ones come from Michael's, they're $5, they're dry and they feel like chalk. I really like the dry kind that feel like chalk, those are my favorite. All right, Sophia, does the video look okay? You can see my paper?
We can see the paper, we just can't see our face.
Good, we don't need to see my face. So, if you don't have watercolors at home, we're gonna start with a pencil and some drawing lessons. So you can follow along and do the pencil portion. There is a reference photo on the Facebook feed, and just in case you didn't watch the other video, I just wanna say thank you to Tara Dunlap for letting us use the Elizabeth Point Lodge, and we are practicing good social distancing. Sophia and I are the only ones here. Sophia is my daughter. And I want to say thank you for Arts Alive Nassau for helping to support the Artist in Residence program and Nassau County Public Schools for allowing us to be Artists in Residence. So one of the things I talked about on the video the other day was a horizon line. So a horizon line is the point where the sky meets the ground. And when we first start drawing, we oftentimes draw the ground down here, the sky up here, and we draw our house, and we draw our little dog Schmoozy, and there's nothing in the middle. And I tell my students to go look outside and tell me where the nothing in the middle is. And every time they do, they say, oh my goodness, Miss Thomas, the sky meets the ground. So when we're drawing today, we're gonna put our horizon line in. That's gonna be the point where our sky meets the ocean, okay? And so we're gonna start with that. So I'm looking out at the ocean. I gave you guys a reference picture so you can see, you can look on your phone, you can print it out in black and white. Printing something in black and white or looking at something in black and white is actually a really great way to learn to draw. It helps you see the highlights and the shadows and the different value of things without worrying about color. So my teachers in college always told me that if you can see it, you can draw it. And so drawing is 90% looking. So I'm looking out at the ocean right now, and what I see is a horizon line about like this. So I'm gonna draw it in. And then I notice that the ocean is a little bit darker right where the horizon line is. And then I like to work in the background, the things that are farthest away from me, and then work forward. So it's a really cloudy day. Notice I'm holding my pencil kind of sideways, so I have a lot of pencil to work with. I'm gonna draw clouds. And the way you draw clouds is by drawing around the clouds. So clouds are usually kind of white and gray, so I like to draw around the clouds. See, my cloud is here, and I've drawn out here. And then I'm going to fill in my sky with different values, different lightnesses and darknesses. Some darker ones, some lighter ones. And I'll fill it in like that. And I may decide that I want to add some poof to my clouds, kind of put some rounded shapes in like this. That would be okay, or some darker areas. And then I'm going to look at my next line, which is where the ocean meets the sand. That's about in here. And there's all these little bumps in the ocean where the wind is causing little ripples in the water. I can kind of draw those in like this. And my favorite part, you can probably hear the waves crashing because it's super windy today, is the waves that are crashing. They kind of look similar to the clouds. I might even go sideways like this, draw some darker parts. And then from here we have these beautiful oats and grasses. When I draw grasses, I like to start from the bottom and just kind of flick my pencil upwards. It gives it a really nice little point at the top. something like this. Now, I wanted to do this demo in pencil, just in case some of my friends at home don't have watercolors on hand, because I hope that you all have a nice number 2 pencil that you're using for your schoolwork, working from home. And if you do, you can definitely do this. So I only spent a couple of minutes on that one just to show you what we were doing, but now we're gonna get to the painting part. Ooh, the sun is poking through. That is exciting.
Yeah.
So there's a couple hints about watercolor. I told you I really like these really dry watercolors, that they're super, super nice. One of the things that my students make mistakes with watercolor is they have to do something called juicing it up. That's what I tell them to do. So when you watercolor, you might get a little water on your paintbrush and do like this, and then you paint and you get some nice colors like that, and then you swirl it back and forth, and they're very light, okay? Or you touch it. Well, when you paint with watercolors, you have to juice it up. So I put a little water in there, and I really swirl my brush around, and I work it in really good. So we have to get that pigment hydrated so that we can use it as paint. And when you do that, look at these beautiful colors you get, okay? See the difference? Now, there's a couple of ways you can hold your paintbrush. This is kind of a flat paintbrush with a rounded tip. So I can hold it this way, or I can hold it this way and make a skinny line, or I can hold it this way and kind of smudge across. This is the way I like to do it with watercolor painting the ocean, is kind of smudging across. So that's one thing I want you to know. Another thing I want you to see that's kind of neat is I have paint on here, and it'll start to dry, but just like I can rehydrate it inside my palette, I can rehydrate it on my canvas. So if I want to spread my paint out, I just add more water. And how you get lightness and darkness in watercolor is by adding more or less water. So you can see this is the same color blue, but as I add more and more water to this color of blue, look how dark it is up here and look how light it is down here. Isn't that interesting? Another thing that's really important to know about watercolor is what happens when you make a mistake. So Miss Thomas loves mistakes. I always say that I am the best mistake fixer in the whole world. There's nothing I like better than helping you solve problems. So if you make what you believe is a mistake on anything, I'm going to make little Zoom meetings on Fridays. You can show me your artwork, you can ask me questions, but I'll be there to help you try and figure out how to fix it. What happens if I accidentally got gray and I did something like that on my watercolor? I would be so sad, wouldn't I? Because I didn't want that gray there. Well, we can rehydrate the gray with some water like this, and we can get a little paper towel or a towel, and we can wipe it right off. How cool is that? That way you don't have to worry about making a mistake. The other important part about watercolor is it's translucent. Translucent is a fancy art word, and what that means is it's a little bit see-through. So when we use it, there's no such thing as white watercolor paint. They make it. It's in sets. It's not really used that much. Some watercolor artists might use it, but I'm not a professional watercolor artist, so I don't know. So when I want to do clouds, I can't paint white paint. What I have to do is paint around the white areas. So when I'm drawing out what I'm going to draw, I'm going to pick the lightest colored areas. Say, here's my drawing, and here I'm going to make a cloud. I might draw the cloud in pencil really gently because I can erase the pencil later. And then I paint around the white, like this, because I want my paper to be the white color for my watercolors, since I can't paint over top of it. So you see, my cloud is made, my sky is painted, I've left it white. So I want you to keep that in mind. And I think we are ready to start. We have a minute of sunshine, so let us get going. All right, so we said making art and drawing is 90% looking. So I'm looking and I'm gonna sketch in very lightly. You might not even be able to see it on camera. Very lightly my horizon line. I'm gonna sketch in my line for my sand like this. And I might want to sketch in some clouds. You don't have to. You can just work the clouds if you want to, but I like to sketch them in as I'm looking at them. There's a lot of clouds today. There's more clouds than not clouds, I think. So I think our background today is going to be more gray. We'll have to ask Miss Tara if we can come back on another day when it's sunshiny. So when painting and when watercolor in particular, you're going to lay it down flat with watercolor so the colors don't run and the water doesn't run down. I'm not going to do that today because I want you to be able to see on the canvas really well what I'm doing. So you might see some drips. When you paint, just paint with your painting flat, okay? And then we always start with the background. I should say Miss Thomas always starts. There's no right or wrong way, okay? There's no right or wrong way. There's just some things that I've learned from doing it over the years. But I want you to experiment and be creative because I would rather you experiment and be creative than do exactly what I do. But my tips, horizon line, so the sky goes all the way down to till it meets the earth or the ocean, and starting with the background. So I like to start with my lighter colors first. And I'm going to put some of this blue in around my clouds. And I might mix a little blue with a tiny little bit of black, because if we have light black, that makes gray. And I don't really want my background to be super bright today because it's kind of a gray day, but maybe you'd like yours to be lighter and brighter. That's okay. Use your creativity. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually wetting my paper where I'm going to put my colors. And that will help my colors spread a little bit more easily. And it'll help them stick to the parts I want them to stick to, the wet parts, and not the other parts. So you see this is really, really light. That's okay, because we can go back over it. The cool thing about watercolor is since it's translucent, that fancy art word that means that it's see-through, we can do lots and lots of layers. All right. And I'm going to make my most finished part in the middle. I'm not going to try to finish the whole thing. Like I said, I can do some tutorials later. I know we're going to do one on color mixing next week. And I think we might do one just on how to paint clouds. So now I'm going to add a little bit of gray into this. So how I get my gray is by doing black with a lot of water. I usually have a section of my paper like right here. I like to just test my color before I stick it on. So that's a little dark, so I add a little bit of water. That way I know what the paint looks like before I actually take it over to the canvas. And we've got a drip, that's okay. I'll show you what we'll do with that drip in a minute. And I'm actually going to put a little bit of gray on my cloud right here, because my cloud is super gray today. Okay. Remember Miss Thomas said, always have a towel on hand, because if you get a little too much, check this out. Just going to spread my gray out a little, and maybe I'm going to soften the gray on my clouds like this. Maybe make my edges soft around there. Check that out. Handy dandy towel, did you know? And then I like to make my darkest areas right around the edges of my clouds. So check out how I'm doing my paintbrush so carefully. Notice how I'm holding it and kind of moving it sideways. This makes really good wiggly edges for clouds. Do you see how there's some real dark areas in there? And there's even some shadows and some highlights in my clouds. So I'm gonna put some of those in. Maybe I want to make the edges of my cloud up here a little bit more defined. Make it stand out a little more from my sky. Now, I am continuously looking at my actual sky to see what it looks like. And what I notice is the bottoms of the clouds tend to be a little darker than the tops of the clouds. So I'm going to put a little of that in. Oh, that's probably too dark, isn't it? So what do we do when it's too dark? We add a little water, spread it out a bit. I could get my towel, do a little blot on the water. There we go. I think my assistant is falling asleep. Are you falling asleep, assistant camera girl?
A little bit.
A little bit? Okay. I've looked at the beautiful sky over lovely Amelia Island many times, and I know some days it has these pockets of lovely bright blue. So I just put a little water on my brush so I can go ahead and spread out this color that I've used. This. I'm gonna kind of blend it in with my gray here. A couple little circles. This out. Now it started to dry, so I'm gonna add a little water. Juice it back up. All right, now I'm coming down to my horizon line. So when I look out, the sky is lightest at the horizon line. So I'm just gonna use water and kind of spread some of my blue across like this. Remember, this time of sun, your sky is gonna look different. You're gonna use your own creative things. You're gonna use your own colors. You might like to do it at sunset and get some of those beautiful purpley colors in there. That would be lovely too. So I'm gonna call my sky done for now. I'm gonna let it dry. One of the best things you can do is, if you're having troubles with a particular area, is let it dry and come back to it later. Sometimes when we keep working it, we turn it into mud. And I like to do skies in layers like that. So I'm gonna let it sit, I'm gonna come back to it later. Now, when I look out at the ocean on the horizon line, there's a really, really dark area right here. Just right there where the ocean meets the sky. And I want the ocean to definitely look different than the sky. So I'm overlapping my sky just a little bit, like this. Getting a lot of blue on there. Come in from this side. I want to get a kind of straightish horizon line. All right, there we go. There's our horizon line where it's a little darker. Kind of go over it, make it a little straighter. Do a thin dark line in here. I want to get this part really, really right. And now there's also some light parts in my ocean. So I just add a little water here, and I'm going to leave some of those light ripples. And as I bring it towards me, I'm going to let it get a little lighter, because as I'm looking at it, remember, making art, drawing, and painting is 90% looking. As I'm looking at it, it gets lighter as it comes towards me. Now, it's really cool when the sun is rising or setting, because when the sun is rising or setting, there's a really cool reflection over the ocean that I really like to look at. Ooh, what happened? That's a little too dark, isn't it? So how do we fix it? Add a little water, wipe it away a little. Check that out, all fixed. Now here's where I'm going to leave my kind of light area, but I want to soften the edges. So I'm going to do some water, like this. Just kind of soften the edges of that lighter area. And then we use my towel, go back in, and wipe a little bit of it off. Kind of smooth out all of that. Okay. So the last, we have our sand, which is down here. So to make a sand color, you can mix like a brown and a yellow to make kind of a nice sand color. And I'm gonna add in my sand here. And now there's some grass that's actually in the front and it goes up over. We're not gonna worry about that grass now. We're gonna first put the sand in because the sand is there even if the grass covers it up. There we go. There's a good sandy color. Had to keep mixing. So it looks a little bit orange at first, but as I spread it out, it turns into a really nice sandy color as it gets a little lighter. Go. Now when I watercolor, I like to leave the edges really soft. So I think I'm going to stop in there and leave some soft edges. Now, my sky part is getting really dry, so that's good. So I'm going to go back and add a couple more details in my sky. So I told you I like to do layers and layers and layers because I think layers look really nice. I want to add a little bit more blue. So I'm checking my blue color here to see if it's where I like it. And I want to kind of crisp up the edges of some of those clouds like this. Okay. And where I have blue already, I just add a little bit more. Really get my clouds kind of defined. The edge is nice. Okay. And then I'm gonna just kind of fan out this bottom part where that fades into the sky. Check that out. You see what it's doing there? But we just had to walk away from it for a minute, work on something else, and let it dry. So we could come back with some fresh eyes, define some of that sky. Now I think it would look cool to have like a blue cloud right here. So I'm gonna do that same cloud painting technique, but I'm gonna make it kind of blue right there. What do you guys think? Can y'all tell that I watched way too much Bob Ross when I was little? Did you see the picture I posted on the Arts Alive page of me and Bob? I met Bob. I got to speak at the Florida Art Educators Conference this year, and I got to meet Bob while I was there. And that I'm going to use something dark, this, and get my edges here. Fan some of that out. Top of my cloud. Notice how I'm holding my paintbrush kind of sideways. Go. I don't like the way that part looks in there, so I'm just going to paint over that a little. Here we go. And then I'm going to fan out the edges of this on the sky side. Like that. And then lastly, I'm going to take a little bit more of that light blue that I used earlier. Just give my sky a nice coat of light blue. Staying away from my clouds so that they really stand out. Catching any runaway drips. You won't have as many problems with runaway drips as I do because you are laying your work down flat on the table. Alright, a little blue in like that. Alright, I think that's pretty good, Sky. What do you think, Sophia?
I think that looks good.
I think that looks pretty good for a super fast sky. Like I said, we'll do a cloud painting tutorial maybe in 2 weeks. Next week we'll do color mixing, and then we'll do some cloud painting. Okay. All right, now our ocean. Our ocean is kind of boring. The reason it's boring is because it's only one color blue. So sometimes when we start painting, we paint our ocean one color blue, we paint our sand one color, sand color. But when we look at it in real life, it's not one color. There's light parts and dark parts and greenish parts and grayish parts. So for your ocean colors, you can experiment a little bit with whatever you think looks interesting. Like I might take some of this green. I know there's not really green in the ocean, but look at that. If I add a little bit of green in there, look how beautiful that looks. Because this is where we get to be creative, right? If we wanted a photograph of it, we could take a photograph. But when we paint it, we get to see whatever we see in our imagination. And I love to see a little bit of green in my ocean like this. And I remember right here is my lighter part. So I'm going to work kind of away from that. So one of the things that I like to kind of do when we look out at the ocean, we see like some ripples where the waves are kind of hitting the water. So I like to do something like that. Those are a little dark. So I'm going to smear them with my finger a little bit. There we go. Add a little more water. So if I want to add some ripples, I can just kind of take my paintbrush and kind of dab it sideways like this. Something like that maybe. Add a few ripples in. If you have some colored pencils you like, you can even draw on top of this with colored pencils when you're done. Or I really, really love watercolor pencils. I used watercolor pencils with my 4th and 5th graders this year, and they loved them. And also with my middle schoolers at another school, I used the watercolor pencils, and they loved it. So watercolor pencils are cool because you use them like a regular colored pencil, but then you can put water on top of them and blend them later. there's my ocean. Now, if you wanted to do some like waves, some crashing waves on your ocean, you could definitely do that. You would want to draw your white part in so you don't paint on top of it. So I didn't plan for crashing waves this time, so I'm not gonna add any crashing waves because of my white part. But I will add like a little bit of a dark, like this. Like just before the wave crests. You know, it has that little dark bits. And then, because I added so much green, I just want to go back, touch up, and make sure my ocean looks blue. Just for me. Like I said, you can do it however you like. But watercolor looks cool in layers. So you can see as I add each layer, it gets prettier and prettier. When I first started painting, you probably thought, what is Miss Thomas doing? But now I'm adding all these layers and it just gets more beautiful. That's the cool thing about using translucent paint. So now look at this lovely color that's happening on our ocean. Add a little bit more blue over here. See, I made a little bubble there because my the wind has blown my paper, but it's okay. It looks like big waves way out in the ocean. You could even put a little island on there if you wanted to. So the last part I want to show you is finishing up the sand. So I'm going to check my color over here, trying to get my brown to be a little darker. So when I look at my sand, sometimes I see little rough parts in the sand like this. Well, when Miss Thomas does that, it just kind of looks like there's lines on there, right? How do we fix it? Well, we go in and we kind of brush that color out once we put it in. Then it will start to look like light and dark parts of the sand. The sand isn't just one color. That one dried a little bit, so how do we fix it? Grab a little water, spread it out a little, just like that. And now the lovely sea oats and grasses. There's some beautiful dunes right here behind the Elizabeth Point Lodge. So I like to use my paintbrush on its side like this, so the skinny way, and then I start from the bottom and I kind of flick up. And if you're nervous about doing that, just do it on a different paper. So I'm not using down here, so I'll just show you down here. I like to do that and flick up. I think that color's a little bit too bright of a green, so I'm going to mix in a little brown with it. Oh yeah, I like that color better. And then just kind of flick up for my seagrasses. And I like to look at the way they're going. They all kind of seem like they are leaning in one direction. Kind of see the area that they're coming from. And they really do, when I look at them, you can see in the reference photo, they really do stand taller than this line where I can see the beach out there. That's where you get the part where you say that drawing is 90% looking, because I couldn't see that. I couldn't imagine that in my brain, but when I look, I can see that those oats are really tall like that. Now, I like to give them something to stand in. They have kind of a ruffled part at the bottom, so again, I'm holding my paintbrush kind of sideways, giving my oats something to stand in. Pull that up and add some more grasses. Do you see how I'm just pulling those grasses through that? So I scruffle, and then I pull the grasses up from that scruffled paint. I get something that looks like that. Alright friends, I am going to stop the video. I so enjoyed painting for you today. If you have any questions, just leave comments below and I will get back to you and answer those. And then I will be making a Zoom session on Friday. So on Friday, I'm going to give you some more sketchbook challenges, and then I'll have a Zoom session. I'll put the link up so you can join it. It'll have a password. That way it'll be really nice and secure, and I'll make sure everybody's muted when they come in, so don't have any concerns about that. But you can come and you can bring me any of your paintings. Sophia, can you show them the painting that you made? So Sophia is so super creative. Let's bring that over here. So super creative, and this is her painting that she did of the ocean. What is the thing that you think is most creative about your piece, Sophia?
I kind of like adding the green in the ocean.
You liked adding the green in the ocean? So she used her imagination and she saw some purple and she had some stars and some raindrops that she added to it. I think it's just lovely. Thank you, friends. You want to put your face in here and say thank you?
Bye.